Hey everyone, I'm Jack, and I wanted to share with you a story from my childhood that still gives me nightmares to this day. It was the spring of 2003, and I was in the 7th grade. Our school organized a camping trip for the whole class. We were all super excited, 3 nights out in the woods, away from the monotony of school, homework, and our parents. Little did we know, this trip would change our lives forever. The first day was everything we had hoped for. We arrived at the campsite early in the morning, the sun shining down on us as we set up our tents. The air was filled with the sounds of nature, birds chirping, leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. Our teacher, Mr. Thompson, went over the ground rules with us, emphasizing the importance of sticking together and respecting the boundaries of the campsite. The campsite itself was pretty cool. It was situated near a dense forest, with a clear, sparkling lake nearby. We spent the day setting up camp and then exploring the area. The teachers were pretty laid back, letting us roam around as long as we didn't go too far. As the day went on, we played games, told jokes, and just enjoyed being kids. It was the perfect start to our trip. The second day, things started to get a little weird. During one of our explorations, a few of us stumbled upon a section of the forest with a rickety old fence and a weathered sign that read, "Keep out, danger." The sign was faded, and it looked like it had been there forever. Naturally, our curiosity was piqued, but Mr. Thompson had been pretty clear about not going into restricted areas, so we just stood there, staring at it, wondering what could be so dangerous. That night around the campfire, we couldn't stop talking about the sign. Theories flew around. Some said it was an old mining area. Others thought it might be a wildlife reserve with dangerous animals. Then there were the more outlandish theories: buried treasure, haunted grounds, secret government facilities. You know, typical kid stuff. By the third day, the curiosity had grown into an obsession for some of us. My friends Mike, Chris, and I decided that we had to know what was behind that fence. The plan was simple: wait until everyone was asleep, sneak out, and explore the restricted area. We figured we'd be back before anyone even noticed we were gone. The day went by slowly, the anticipation building with every passing hour. We played it cool, acting like everything was normal. After dinner, we all gathered around the campfire again for ghost stories. As the fire died down and the night grew darker one by one, everyone headed to their tents. Around midnight, we quietly slipped out of our tents. The campsite was eerily silent, the only sound being the occasional hoot of an owl. Armed with flashlights and our sense of adventure, we made our way to the fence. It was even creepier at night, the shadows from our flashlights making everything look distorted and menacing. We found a spot where the fence was slightly bent, enough for us to squeeze through. As soon as we were on the other side, it felt like we had entered another world. The forest was denser here, the trees taller and more twisted. There was an unsettling stillness, like the forest was holding its breath. We walked deeper into the woods, our excitement slowly turning into unease. There was no path, just thick underbrush and twisted roots. After about 30 minutes of stumbling around, we came across an old, dilapidated cabin. It looked abandoned, but there was something off about it. The windows were boarded up, and the door was barely hanging on its hinges. Chris, always the brave one, suggested we go inside. Mike and I were hesitant, but we didn't want to seem scared, so we agreed. The door creaked loudly as we pushed it open, the sound echoing through the silent night. Inside, the air was musty, and the floor was covered in dirt and debris. It looked like no one had been there for years. We split up to explore the small cabin. Mike found an old, rusted lantern and tried to light it, but it didn't work. Chris discovered a trapdoor in the corner, half hidden under a pile of rags. With a mix of fear and excitement, we decided to open it. The trapdoor led to a narrow staircase, descending into darkness. We shined our flashlights down but couldn't see the bottom. After a brief moment of hesitation, we started down the stairs one by one. The steps creaked under our weight, and the air grew colder the deeper we went. At the bottom, we found ourselves in a small, underground room. The walls were lined with strange symbols, and in the center of the room was a large wooden chest. Our curiosity got the better of us, and we opened it. Inside, we found old tattered clothes, a few rusty tools, and a stack of yellowed papers. As we were rummaging through the chest, we heard a noise from above, the sound of the trapdoor slamming shut. Panic set in as we realized we were trapped. We rushed back up the stairs, but the door wouldn't budge. We pounded on it, shouting for help, but the forest outside remained silent. Hours passed, though it felt like days. Our flashlights began to dim, and the cold was seeping into our bones. We huddled together for warmth, trying to keep our spirits up, but fear was taking over. We had no idea how we were going to get out of there. Just as we were about to lose hope, we heard voices from above. We shouted as loud as we could, and soon, the trapdoor creaked open. It was Mr. Thompson and a couple of other teachers. They had noticed we were missing and had organized a search party. Relief flooded over us as we were pulled out of the dark, cold room and back into the fresh night air. However, our relief was short-lived. As we were escorted back to the campsite, we realized something horrifying. Chris wasn't with us. In the confusion and panic, he must have gotten separated from us. We all turned back, but the trapdoor was once again shut tight, and no amount of pulling could open it. The teachers radioed for help, and soon, the whole campsite was buzzing with activity. Search teams scoured the area, but there was no sign of Chris. As dawn approached, a helicopter was brought in to assist with the search. We watched, helpless and terrified, as the hours dragged on with no news. By midday, the search was called off. The adults tried to keep us calm, but we could see the fear in their eyes. The helicopter airlifted us out of the campsite and we were all taken home, our trip cut short by the horrifying events of the night. Chris was never found. The forest and the cabin were thoroughly searched, but it was like he had vanished into thin air. The authorities eventually deemed it an accidental disappearance, but those of us who were there knew something far more sinister had happened. To this day, I can't explain what we saw or why Chris disappeared. The memory of that night haunts me, and I often wonder what would have happened if we had just left that fence alone. It's a lesson I'll never forget. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. Thanks for listening to my story. If you're ever out in the woods and come across a "Keep Out Danger" sign, take my advice. Heed the warning. You never know what might be lurking in the shadows, waiting for curious kids like us.